This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. About 2 months ago, I did this video about Meghan and Harry interfering in the 2020 elections. As you can see, not many people viewed it. So I'm not sure if it's because the video wasn't interesting enough, or if YouTube suppressed it, or people just looked at the title and said, I'm not going to look at that because, hey, Meghan and Harry have zero influence here in the United States and nobody takes them seriously. So we're going to pass on this video because a lot of people who come to my channel don't really care about politics. They want to hear more about the stupid stuff like Meghan's fluctuating bump. Now, a main reason as to why I started speaking out about Meghan and Harry in 2021 was because of observing their bad behavior and the rumors that were flying around that they were thinking about moving to New York. To accompany that, there was also the rumor that was going around that she was eyeing a New York Senate seat. So for me, that was a red flag, and I started to speak out because that was the last thing that I wanted to see happen, especially since she's caused so much destruction and sowed so much discourse online. Now, at the time, a core group of Meghan's homegrown, domestically funded terrorist group called the Sussex Squad had resided in the New York tri-state area. And my fear was if she moved to New York, that terrorist group was going to grow bigger. And that would be the last thing that we would need here in New York City. Although what is happening now with the policies that Biden has put in place, it wouldn't have mattered if Meghan moved here because it's happening anyway. And I saw that coming. And as someone who lives in New York City and has witnessed what has been going on over the last 3 years as a result of the policies of the current administration that Meghan and Harry helped to get into office, I'm telling you, crime is up, inflation is up. I'm telling you, disease now is up as a result of all these migrants coming here and not being vaccinated or checked. That is spreading like wildfire. People are suffering. Our streets are drug-riddled. Now, I have shared with you what has been going on here over the last year as things have started to get worse. New York is really on the verge of collapse, and the media is refusing to report it. And as I had suspected from day one, what people like Meghan and Harry would bring is exactly what is playing out. And we cannot go another 4 years like this. So the reason why I'm raising this 2020 election interference by this couple and the squad and other folks that they have aligned with, it's happening again in 2024. So today, left-leaning media outlet Axios had pushed out a propaganda piece of this new effort to, quote-unquote, inoculate U.S. voters against AI misinformation. This propaganda that's being pushed by the people behind the censorship industrial complex starts this puff piece off by saying a bipartisan coalition with support from Hollywood power players and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's Archwell Foundation is working to prepare U.S. voters for a possible deepfake onslaught as the campaign year goes into high gear. Now, as you can see here, you notice something that's missing from this that was done on purpose because they know that people would be in an uproar are the titles. It's Meghan Markle now, no longer Duchess of Sussex, right? And Prince Harry, even though his name is there and Prince is there, no longer Duke of Sussex. So here we are, them blatantly backing this, but, taking the hands-off approach that, we're not using our titles. Me, Meghan Markle, as a private citizen, can do what I want with U.S. politics. Their PR people understand the backlash that those titles bring if it's associated anywhere near American politics. But they decide to open up this puff piece with Meghan and Harry only because of their association with the royal family. So it's like saying it without having to say it. And you can tell by this because in the first sentence alone, they're not calling Meghan and Harry Hollywood power players, but they put Prince Harry's name first before Meghan's. So you know that they are using the association to the royal family to draw the attention. Which it does concern me a little bit because Harry did allow them to put the word prince in there instead of just calling him Harry. I'm raising a red flag here, and I'll explain in a little bit why I think this is a problem for the monarchy. Let us go through and dissect what this puff piece really means, as it says, why it matters, with federal agencies and social media companies barely talking to each other about AI driven misinformation threats. This is a disaster waiting to happen. No one's doing the public inoculation, warned Miles Taylor, Chief Policy Officer of the future U.S., which is coordinating the campaign. Taylor is a former Department of Homeland Security Chief of Staff, the same organization that is holding back Harry's visa, and author of a celebrated op-ed critique of the Trump administration from an anonymous insider who wrote a tell-all book. So this is Miles Taylor, and although he worked under the Trump administration, he also worked under the Bush administration. And I think, in my humble opinion, that this guy had been groomed by the CIA, in which the Bush family had been closely tied with the CIA, a Republican who did not get to serve in the Obama administration, but was brought back in under the Trump administration under John F. Kelly, who was a part of the Obama administration, and then worked under the Trump administration, in which this guy, Miles Taylor, then flipped and became a rhino, meaning a traitor to the Republican Party, and turned on Trump by going to the New York Times to publish this piece about why he was part of the resistance inside the Trump administration. You guys see what's going on here, what was happening to Donald Trump as he was president, and the forces that were working against him. There's no doubt in my mind that after this guy flipped, he was set up to be welcomed by Google in their government affairs as a policy manager and had the title of Head of National Security Policy Engagement. What I do find interesting is that after Miles left the Trump administration in 2019 and went over to Google to work in their government department, he then stepped down after Biden got elected in office. You have to wonder, did he give back his security clearance? Anyhow, he then went on to be a contributor to liberal left-wing media such as CNN, BBC, MSNBC. I'll let you draw your own conclusion on how this all went down, but now he's been tasked, entrepreneur spirit in starting this movement of the future U.S. and putting together this nonprofit, nonpartisan wink wink. And this is where we come full circle back to this article by Axios. Now, pay attention to how they use their words. The big picture. Last September, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the White House, FBI, and other federal officials likely violated the First Amendment by encouraging social media companies to crack down on COVID-19 misinformation. Now, folks, that's not entirely true. It's not just COVID-19 misinformation. It was also the 2020 elections. And it's not that they likely violated. They did violate the First Amendment, in which we saw in evidence through the Twitter files. Now, hopefully this is all coming full circle now. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I've talked about these Twitter files in which Jim Jordan had been exposing this with Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger. But anyhow, continuing on. What they're saying, Trump won the presidency on a badass earned media campaign, Taylor told Axios, suggesting his deepfake coalition could achieve free distribution with influencers reaching 75 million Americans. The government isn't talking to social media companies. Many of the social media companies don't want anything to do with the government, rightfully so, which means novel AI threats could get missed, Taylor told Axios. Goes on to say cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, officials confirmed the lack of content in a March reporter briefing. Now, folks, CISA was also a part of this censorship industrial complex, as seen here with Meghan and Harry and all the agencies that Harry was aligned with Aspen Institute. The article then says, driving the news. The future U.S. shared 2 prototype ads that the group is using to gin up interest among Hollywood screenwriters, ad executives, and influencers for what it hopes to be a massive earned media campaign, supplemented by an initial $5 million of paid advertising in swing states. So hold up for a second. $5 million. Where is this nonprofit getting $5 million? Oh, right, the U.S. taxpayer. So here we have this nonprofit, supposed to be nonpartisan, but they are targeting now the swing states. I mean, they couldn't be more in your face about, we don't want you to vote for Trump, and here's how we're going to inject fear. So if you see this, don't do that. Here's what you need to do. We're going to inoculate you so you can recognize what's misinformation. So let's take a look at these ads that they're planning to go to Hollywood with to pitch in order for them to create more fear tactics. So the first ad is this woman in Arizona who's picking up the phone on election day. Here is what they produced.
Hello?
Hi, is this Caroline Smith?
Yes.
I have you at 78 Edgewood Court, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Who's calling?
Hi, Caroline, this is Bob Anderson down at the polling station at West Plaza High.
Uh-huh.
We're calling everyone in the West Plaza precinct to let them know we've received a few threats from a local militia group that the police are taking very seriously.
What? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You know, we actually tried calling your husband Peter, but he didn't answer.
Oh, I think he must be driving.
Oh, okay. Well, we're asking voters to stay at home today until we can get this situation resolved.
Okay.
The governor has already issued an extension on ballot submission, so you can go ahead and plan on coming in tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you so much for letting me know.
Absolutely. Be safe out there.
And then there's this other one of destroying ballots. I don't know about you, but these ads that are going to be produced in Hollywood, knowing that the Gia is running rampant all over Hollywood, and then on top of it, enter in Meghan Markle and Prince Harry being a part of this campaign to so-called create content. Would you trust anything that is put out by these people by now? No. I mean, are we shocked that Meghan and Harry are in there trying to get their grubby little hands on $5 million taxpayer dollars? No. Now, even though this article was short, they had a lot of hyperlinks within it. So what I did today was I went through each and every one of them. Now, even though this article was short, they had a lot of hyperlinks within it. So what I did today was I went through each and every one of them. And this net to control information really is pervasive of every corner of the internet that I think we should all be concerned about, especially when it comes down to the upcoming elections, not only in the United States, but also in the other countries. Because what's happening in Brazil can easily happen here in the United States as a result of what our country, U.S., has been doing to affect election outcomes. Let's begin by looking at this nonprofit that Harry and Meghan are working with, in which this organization, the Future U.S., aims to be Washington, D.C.'s crystal ball, deploying tomorrow's breakthroughs to shape policy today. Okay, so in other words, they want to be the one driving the narrative. The future U.S. is guided by 100+ technologists, CEOs, civil society experts, investors, former senior government officials, best-selling authors, researchers, media personalities, and other leaders. Now, in their press release that came out in March, it says launch of AI plus election security coalition. Group announces nationwide effort to protect elections against AI-enabled threats and apply AI for good. Washington, D.C. In an ambitious stride towards safeguarding democracy, the future U.S., a policy studio based in Washington, D.C., announced the formation of the nationwide AI plus election security coalition. The coalition represents an acceleration of efforts to secure the 2024 election against threats enabled by artificial intelligence and to identify opportunities to leverage emerging AI technology to safeguard the democratic process. The AI and Election Security Coalition, which include Harry and Meghan, will unite a diverse group of stakeholders from pro-democracy organizations, technology companies, civil society groups, think tanks, and research institutions to better coordinate their actions and to rapidly identify needed interventions. What? The coalition has been operating informally since 2023 and will publicly expand its work to respond to the implications of AI technologies on the security and fairness of elections with a special focus on the 2024 vote. Of course they will. They can't let Biden administration lose. So what are they trying to do? They're going to inoculate the masses with whatever they're trying to push out to brainwash or scare the public. I'm sorry, but anything that Meghan and Harry touch, along with the people that are associated to this, because I'm going to show you some familiar faces now, should not be trusted. And I've shown you in numerous videos what they did to the American people, not only in the lies, but then also suppressing and controlling information that did determine a specific outcome of the 2020 election. This had huge impact on this country, and right now we're in a whole massive shambles with all the migrants, inflation. I mean, America is last, and we are on the path to being destroyed. And these folks are the ones that want to make sure that the same regime stays in place. Oh God, no, 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 no. Run the other way, folks. Run, run, run. So, when we take a look at the future U.S. and the people that make up this organization in the so-called institutes section, they smack you in the face with the future of security, peace through innovation, whatever that may mean. But in any case, the goal here is to install this fear that democracy is under threat and we can't allow, misinformation to fly by because, God forbid, if Biden loses the election this year and Donald Trump gets put into office, then, we're going to have to blame Russia, Russia, Russia again. But anyhow, here we go. So as it says here, it says, foresee threats, defend democracy. First off, how are you going to, foresee the threats? I mean, allow the people to make their own mind up and critically think for themselves. No amount of this inoculation is going to change my mind to what is happening outside in the real world. But in any case, they want Washington and Silicon Valley to collaborate more because right now they're not doing so much of that because of this Missouri versus Biden court case in which the government was exposed for suppressing America's free speech. Anyhow, the key advisors to this organization is this future of security, whoever these very diverse people that we're seeing here, And of course, I'm being facetious, but when you look at these key advisors and they're supposed to be the experts, and you notice that they're former White House employees as well as former employees under Obama, you get the picture of what's really going on. But then when you scroll down and you look at the visionaries, the ones that are the so called experts that know better than all of us, that are going to tell us what we need to think, you start to see some familiar faces. Well. Look who we have here. Jory Craig, head of elections for the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, or the ISD. Jory has also been seen as one of the lead consultants for Archwell, in which she gets a six-figure salary to put reports together in order to push for policy trying to censoring speech. Remember this Archwell report that was put together? I talked about it, I think, in a recent video. Yeah, these people crawl around to these various nonprofits and organizations getting money from the US government to go ahead and try and take our rights away. But here she is, front and center, as a visionary and someone that we need to trust in order to inoculate us on the right way to think about the elections. Now, if you watch the video that I did on Lady C's book, towards the end, I talked about this. Remember, the Institute for Strategic Dialogue has been involved in meddling with European elections. So now you understand what these people are trying to do when you look at this whole entire complex setup and Meghan and Harry's involvement with it. Get familiar with these names, because not only are they listed in the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit, but they are all over these NGOs in trying to influence. You have Renee DiResta from Stanford University, who was former CIA, Jory Craig from the Institute of Strategic Dialogue. Then you have University of Washington, Kate Starbird, who's also part of that lawsuit, that Harry was on the Aspen Commission on Information Disorder as well. These people are relentless, and that's because the US government is giving our tax dollars to them. Like, NGOs and nonprofits are popping up all over the place. Like, take, for instance, going back to this article, they write, these so-called experts predict both malicious state actors and domestic political operatives will use deepfake technology and other media manipulation to confuse voters during the US election campaign. Oren Etzioni, a former CEO of Allen Institute for AI, is offering free tools to journalists and fact checkers for spotting AI disinformation through a new nonprofit called TrueMedia.org. Let's click on TrueMedia.org and see what they're about. TrueMedia.org, identifying political deepfakes in social media using AI. So using AI with AI, I guess. Scrolling down, let's see who their partners are. Well, there you have it, Microsoft. That should tell you enough. Okay, let's see who the experts are. We have the founders. Oh, look who we have here. Kate Starbird. Oh, and Renee DiResta. Need I say any more? Yo, just shut that down. Shut it down. Don't visit the site. Just know that stay away. Oh, but it gets better, folks, because going down this rabbit hole and exploring all these links, I stumble upon this report. Election Preparedness Report for 2024. What is this, you might ask? KMSG put together this little ditty, and you might ask, who are they? Well, KM Strategies Group is a strategy, social impact management, and communications consulting firm, led by founder and managing director Kindred Motes. KM Strategies brings more than a decade of communications, social impact, philanthropic, and digital strategy experience to its practice. KMSG provides unique expertise at the intersections of philanthropic strategy and program management, nonprofit advocacy, and mission-oriented communications and strategic engagement, and social impact partnerships. So when you go past the bullshit socialist word salad that they use to convince you that they're making this all about community and making the world a brighter place, you see who their clients are and the programs that they support. Check this out. Some of the global clients that they have listed here: Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, the organization that Meghan and Harry gave money to; Global Citizen, the event that they did in New York City. And then we have USAID, which is interesting. Why are they supporting this agency that belongs to the government? Is it because we're giving them money? Possibly. Now, when you scroll down and look at the corporate and philanthropic campaigns, look at the logos that are listed here. Archwell Fugazi Public Charity, along with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as the Ford Foundation. We also have Salesforce. We have the IMF. We have the UN. Now, what type of initiatives are these companies working on with a company like this? Well, when you expand this and you look at the entertainment, social justice, pop culture initiatives, we have the United Nations, the United States Congress. Oh, looky here, the Parliament of the United Kingdom, Summit G20, heads of state and government. We have, South by Southwest, Global Citizen, and Aspen Ideas Festival, aka Aspen Institute. So this organization is really serious about election preparedness, and Meghan and Harry just so happened to pop up out of nowhere, being a part of this initiative going on with the future U.S. Folks, I'm telling you, these two, once again, trying to meddle behind the scenes in controlling freedom of speech by what they're doing, now inserting themselves with trying to, once again, interfere with our elections to sway a particular outcome, which that outcome is the current regime staying in place. It's interesting that Archwell, aka Harry and Meghan, have aligned with KMSG, most likely now working with them in order to push whatever political aspirations that Meghan may have now or still trying to achieve. But the founder, Kindred Motes from Alabama, actually, interestingly enough, went to college in the UK, which I found quite interesting. Not sure if it's connected to Harry in any way, but it's listed right there. But this guy has been fully groomed in the World Economic Forum and globalist mindset. Now, what I can't stand about these kinds of organizations, not only are they getting U.S. money, but also when you look at what they're about, the optics that they want to portray is exploiting minorities. So, of course, they have to put front and center 2 Black people as their advisory board. But then when you look at the rest of their employees, probably thinking that no one's going to scroll further down to the bottom, you get to see how diverse really the company is, in which you see all white people. But at least they put the guys on the bottom. You don't see any other kind of diversity, but nope, they've got the 2 Black people, the token Black people up in front to make sure that you understand that they are DEI. And bonus points to Motes because he's also part of the LGBTQIA group. Yes, folks, this is what we've come to, and it's all about the money, and it's disgusting. And when you see these types of organizations and you see Meghan and Harry aligned with it, you know that all of it's just fraud because none of them believe anything that they are preaching. None of them do. Folks, expect to see more of this propaganda coming out, but know when to recognize that it's propaganda and most likely coming from the very same people who are saying that they want to preserve democracy. These are the same outlets that supported Meghan and Harry and their lies, as well as the same outlets that hid and suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop, which definitely did influence and impact the outcome of the 2020 elections. Do not let that happen. Go outside and talk to people. See what's going on. I know for me, with my own eyes, seeing what's happening in New York City is a result of the policies that this administration has put in place, not to benefit the American people, but to benefit people like Meghan and Harry. All this money that they are taking from the American people and doling it out to these stupid NGOs for bullshit is a scam. This is all a scam. And here we have Meghan and Harry front and center now getting their noses back into our business, in which this couple has done enough damage and I'm sorry, I love you, UK, but stop interfering with our rights and trying to take it away. We separated from the UK for a reason and came over here. Leave us alone. Now, I know I sound like a broken record, but my hope is that more and more people will have the light bulb turn on to say, holy cow, he should really be deported out of this country. Remember, we have a prince of the UK on US soil acting on behalf of the state. Remember, he was a part and still is part of the Aspen Commission on Information Disorder, in which taxpayer dollars were given to fund that report, which means that he was contracted by the government in order to produce this bullshit report in order to push legislation and policy. That to me is a serious conflict in which he should be kicked out because he's not registered as a foreign agent. And you have to ask the question, how did he know about January 6th? Why is it that nobody from Congress questioned him? Now we know about all these bots, or at least more and more people know about these bots. How do we not know that he was not a part of that community gaslighting and inciting people online to get to J6? I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there because you know what? All the people that are involved that are now getting sued are now being exposed and called out for the manipulation and what they had been doing and trying to suppress conservative speech. Look, we are dangerously close to what is going on in Brazil, all thanks to the assistance of the US government and the so-called Chia. One could argue that it's already happening here in the US, as well as other Western countries. Currently, right now, Brazil is going after X because he won't censor political accounts that the Brazilian government told Elon to censor, and he is being criminally charged now for not abiding by the court and the law. This is a big deal, and I guarantee the way that the media is spinning it, as you can see here, it's positioning it as, oh, Elon Musk obstructs and not wants to remove disinformation. That's not it. This is about free speech, and our government, the U.S. government, getting involved. Listen to Mike Benz explain this situation with Brazil and why this should matter to the U.S. when it comes to our First Amendment rights.
Hey, in this vid, I want to talk about what the State Department would normally do when a country like Brazil would attack a U.S. multinational tech company. So I don't see this Brazil censorship situation as being a Brazil situation. I see this being the U.S. State Department. I see this being the U.S. foreign policy establishment. I see this being the U.S. blob operating through Brazil as a proxy and supporting behind the scenes what Brazil is doing with the censorship actions that are now forcing X out of the country. So let me break down what I mean here. So the blob fears populism. Okay, the U.S. foreign policy establishment fears the rise of domestic populist groups in the U.S. and around the world, in NATO countries and in BRICS countries, like Brazil, BRICS. So here's what's happening here. A couple of years ago, I wrote a report, which I was very shocked to discover at the time. Well, I should say I was shocked at the extent of it, but basically it turned out that when I was looking into what was behind censorship in Brazil, it turned out that what was driving it appeared to be a gaggle of U.S. State Department funded NGOs, and not just State Department funded NGOs, but they were actually National Endowment for Democracy funded as well. You had USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy funding a bunch of domestic censorship groups in Brazil. This actually goes right back to the beginning of Bolsonaro's tenure in 2019. In June 2019, the Atlantic Council convened a meeting about what to do about the rise of disinformation in Brazil that was pro-Bolsonaro in nature. And the Atlantic Council's panel, called Election Watch in June 2019, bemoaned the fact that in Brazil, people were paying more attention to their own friends, family, and clergy than they were to institutions, global institutions, such as the Atlantic Council, which is a CIA pass-through. It has 7 CIA directors on its board. It's annually funded every year by the Pentagon, the State Department, and the National Endowment for Democracy, which is a CIA cutout. Now, in addition to that, a bunch of these university centers in Brazil and civil society groups get National Endowment for Democracy funding. That is a CIA pass-through. So this is the CIA and State Department and USAID directly funding in June 2019, the censorship apparatus in Brazil against pro-Bolsonaro groups. See, in 2019, social media was already censored in Brazil. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube censorship in Brazil hit them really hard, the same way that it did in the US. So Bolsonaro supporters switched to WhatsApp and Telegram to spread their messaging because they were basically kicked off of Facebook. This is why one of the biggest audiences for Gab, one of the first free speech sort of alternative platform attempts, was the Brazilian population in 2018, 2019, because they were hit with that first wave of censorship hard. So what the Atlanta Council and a bunch of these other National Endowment for Democracy funded CIA proxies did is they then descended on WhatsApp and Telegram. And they promoted these little organs, these little activists, these little proxies within Brazil to put pressure on the Brazilian government to take out WhatsApp and Telegram until WhatsApp and Telegram also censored populist supporters, right-wing populist nationalist Bolsonaro supporters. And so that led to WhatsApp putting caps on the amount of messages that could be forwarded. And it led to them basically shutting down the ability to approximate the size of a Facebook group. They vastly reduced the amount of people who could populate a single group in order to basically balkanize pro-Bolsonaro speech. And then when Telegram refused to censor misinformation, they actually shut down Telegram in the country until it bent the knee to the government. So when it came out by The Intercept a couple years later, The Intercept reported this last year. They were surprised. They said, it turns out that the State Department and the CIA directly intervened in Brazil's election, the Lula election, in order to stop Bolsonaro supporters from being able to challenge the election results or challenge the issues around mail-in ballots. This is the CIA, the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, and the State Department deploying your taxpayer dollars in order to censor Brazilians talking about their own election, because they wanted Bolsonaro to lose. Now, it gets a lot darker here too, because remember, if they were censoring, pro-Biden speech actually, one more thing. So again, Bolsonaro was like Trump of the tropics. That's the way that he was touted. The blob, the foreign policy establishment, feared a new non-aligned movement, which was the scourge of our blob during the Cold War in the form of all these populist countries. Bolsonaro was part of this wing along with Orban and a bunch of right-wing populist groups in Europe, and he was insufficiently anti-Russia on a number of things. I can get to that another time. But essentially, here's what would normally happen if a foreign country like Brazil did what it just did. And you can think of it as if Brazil was choosing to censor pro-Biden neoliberal groups in Brazil, this is what would happen as well. So the first thing that would happen is the State Department would come rushing in, because the State Department is sort of the head of that trifecta there, with the State Department, DOD, and CIA. That's our foreign policy establishment. So the first thing is the State Department would send a delegation and say, hey, Brazil, you are reliant on us for trade in these three respects. We have, you're reliant on us for funding of your civil society in these respects. You're reliant on us for security guarantees in certain respects. You depend on us for some of this, supply chain infrastructure. Hey, if you want to keep that, then you're going to rescind this law that you just passed, or this ruling that just came down from your Supreme Court that's hurting a U.S. national champion operating in your area. This is what the State Department would do for Microsoft, for Apple, and for Facebook, by the way, because this gets to another issue here around favors in the favor bank. Okay. One of the reasons that tech companies do favors to the federal government, everyone's like, why did Facebook give in? Because Zuckerberg did not want to do the censorship that Facebook ultimately ended up doing. He's not a diehard, ideologue on the censorship issue. In fact, he complained in 2019 about censorship going too far, and then he bent the knee. And, because Facebook is an example where Facebook doesn't rely on the government for a lot of government contracts in the same way that Amazon and Apple and Microsoft do. But they are reliant on the government to protect them. They are reliant on the State Department to negotiate on their behalf, on the State Department to pressure foreign countries to make sure that alternative Facebooks don't rise, or that the data laws in that country don't negatively impact Facebook, or that the advertising laws, you name it. And so, in this case, We just passed sanctions on Iran last summer for Iran engaging in government censorship of civilian groups. That is, we banned multiple private companies in Iran. We put sanctions on the Iranian government, kicking them off of the US dollar, these folks, for engaging in censorship in Iran. Now, of course, this was because the CIA was backing these proxy groups during this Green Revolution to try to overthrow the government. And so when Iran pushed back on the CIA-backed groups, then suddenly sanctions. The U.S. State Department here is not going to threaten sanctions on Iran for this. I'm sorry, sanctions on Brazil on this. The U.S. State Department is not going to send a delegation to Brazil and say, hey, if you want to benefit from America as a trade partner, if you want us to continue doing favors for you, you're going to shut down this new situation with hurting U.S. national champions in the form of Twitter/X in Brazil. But that's not going to happen here. And that's not going to happen here because the State Department is behind it, okay? I would not be surprised if the State Department has had these back. I know this came from a Supreme Court ruling in Brazil, but I can almost guarantee you, if the House Foreign Affairs Committee launches an investigation on this and goes to the Western Hemisphere, that's the regional desk that's going to cover Brazil, and looks at their communications with the Brazilian government, you're going to find that disinformation it's going to be chock full there, and it's all going to be targeted at the right-wing populist groups that they call a pipeline from Bolsonaro to Trumpism. And you can actually go to the FFO article that I wrote on this 2 years ago, and you can watch the playthrough videos, which I embedded in the report, which showed U.S. aid and NED, that's CIA-backed professors in Brazil, talking about how by shutting down these pro-Bolsonaro groups, it will shut down support for Trumpism. Well, ain't that great for the Biden administration? They're spending your tax dollars to promote censorship in a foreign country to take out a U.S. national champion.
Remember that I told you that resources in Meghan and Harry's camp are being repurposed and used for different things? Well, I'm just going to leave this right here. You can pause it and make what you will of it. But if you do some digging on your own and go through the historicals, you'll understand what is really going on here. And you can bet that this same type of behavior, I would say, applied to other things in 2020 as well as in 2021. And that's why now people are getting sued and things are going to the Supreme Court. Anyhow, I will leave it at that. But what do you guys think? Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe and I will talk to you later. Bye.
Such a fraud.